Hi everyone, welcome back. I made a recent video about what I called the DB pension trick. I had a great level of engagement with that video, so many thanks to all of you that liked, subscribed and commented on it. I noticed that there were a few questions in the comments and also some common misunderstandings, so that's what I'd like to go through in this video today. It's a part 2, it's a follow-up to the DB pension trick. So I want to answer the most frequently asked questions, which are: is this even allowed? Isn't this pension recycling? Doesn't this trigger the MPAA? And the third one is, do you have to use a SIPP? Plus, there are many other comments and questions that I'll cover, so stay tuned. Welcome back to all existing viewers and subscribers. If you are new here, my name is Dianne. I'm a financial coach who is qualified in advanced financial advice, and I support people to achieve money and life goals. What is pension recycling? It seemed that a lot of people were saying that I should warn everyone about pension recycling. You're absolutely right. Thank you for those comments. I have made a previous video about the details of pension recycling that I'll link to in this video if you want to watch after this one. But on the screen, you can see the HMRC definition of pension recycling. And the point is that these rules are specifically designed to stop people recycling the tax-free cash portion of their pension. If the rule didn't exist, you could take tax-free cash and pay it back into another pension and get another round of tax relief. And in fact, there would, in theory, be nothing to stop you doing that multiple times. Well, there is something to stop you doing that, and that's the pension recycling rules. All 5 of these conditions have to apply in order for HMRC to deem a contribution into a pension to be pension recycling. And if HMRC do come after you, the fines are pretty hefty. But this only applies to the tax-free lump sum. This does not apply to income from a DB pension. Taking regular income from your DB pension and using it to fund a defined contribution pension is absolutely not pension recycling. Does taking a DB pension trigger the MPAA? Now, another common concern was, surely taking a DB pension income triggers the MPAA. And many of you are concerned about that. So for those of you that are not aware of what it is and why it's something that you should be concerned about, it's because MPAA stands for the Money Purchase Annual Allowance. And that's where you are only allowed to put £10,000 per year into your pension and receive tax relief. There are several things that will trigger the imposition of the MPAA. Taking income from a DB pension is absolutely not one of them. And why would this matter to people? Because clearly, if you were still working, you want to maximize your annual allowance. You want to be able to continue to put as much as possible into your pension, and particularly if you are planning to put your DB income into your pension, you might not want that amount to be limited to just £10,000 per year. And typically, the MPAA is triggered when you take money from your pension via UFPLS, also called UF+. And it's also triggered when you start taking money flexibly from your pension through a Flexi Access drawdown. As I've said, taking income from a DB pension does not trigger it. And also, if you take just the tax-free cash, just your PCLS from a DC pension and nothing else, no other income, that also does not trigger the MPAA. So taking your DB income, paying it into a SIPP, you continue to enjoy the full annual allowance that you are entitled to. And I will also come on to more detail about the annual allowance later in the video, because that's also something that received lots of comments. It doesn't have to be a SIPP. In my original video, I used the example of taking your DB income and paying it into a SIPP. You might also know a SIPP as private pension. And the reason I chose a SIPP specifically was to point out a number of things, actually. One of them is the fact that if you are a higher rate taxpayer, you only get 20% tax relief automatically in a SIPP, and you have to claim the additional 20% tax relief through self-assessment. That gets paid to you, and then it's your responsibility to pay that into your SIPP, or not, should you choose to. There is a lot of unclaimed tax relief in higher taxpayers who have a SIPP and don't realise that they have to claim the additional 20%. So irrespective of what your source of money is that you are paying into the SIPP, whether that's your DB income or other sources of money, and you are a higher rate taxpayer, then do make sure that you claim the additional 20% tax relief through your self-assessment. But on the other hand, if you have a workplace pension and the payments into that come out of your gross salary, then you automatically receive the full tax relief. And that, of course, is the other way that you could benefit from your DB income by topping up the contribution to your workplace pension from your main salary to the tune of the amount that you are getting from your DB income, or lower or higher. It's completely your choice. And you may prefer that reduced admin burden as opposed to paying your DB into a SIPP. But the other reason that I chose the SIPP example is because you have no control over who your workplace pension platform provider is. Your employer will have chosen that for you. So you have no control over the fund choice. And as important, if not perhaps more important, is the fee that you pay. By opening a SIPP and paying your DB income into that, you potentially have a greater choice of investments and could potentially save yourself a lot in fees. And thinking forwards, if it was your plan to eventually consolidate into a separate SIPP away from your workplace pension provider or providers in order to manage your money during retirement, this might be a good opportunity to get ahead of the game and open up the SIPP now to get used to using it. So yes, if it is your intention to be paying your DB income into your pension while you are still working, it does not have to just be a SIPP. You could increase your contributions from your salary to net out to the same income. However, think about the pros and cons of both approach and what your ultimate objective is for your retirement in terms of the admin and management of your money. Annual limits on contributions. And you should all be well aware that there is a limit to the amount that you can receive tax relief on in terms of the annual amount that you can pay into your pension and receive tax relief. Contributions to your pension and tax relief are two separate things because in theory, there's nothing stopping you paying as much as you want into your pension. However, there is a limit to the amount that you can pay in and receive tax relief on it. Firstly, anyone can pay contributions into a defined contribution pension up to £3,600 per year, irrespective of whether or not they are working. So for example, if you're a couple and one of you is a sole breadwinner and the other one of you is a homemaker and stay at home and not working, then it's a missed opportunity for that tax relief if you aren't paying that amount into that non-worker person's pension. And then beyond that amount, your tax relievable contributions depend on your UK relevant earnings and the annual allowance. The annual allowance is the maximum amount that you can contribute to your pension each year without incurring a tax charge. In other words, it's the maximum amount that you can contribute and receive tax relief. And that total amount includes your contributions, your employer's contributions, if appropriate, any third-party contributions, as well as the tax relief by HMRC if you are contributing to your pension from your net pay and that's been subsequently topped up. And for most people, this limit is £60,000 per year. However, if you are a high earner, the taper applies down to the limit of £10,000 per year. And as covered earlier, if you access your pension flexibly, that's UF+ or Flexi Access Drawdown, then the MPAA is triggered so that your annual allowance is limited to £10,000 a year. And listed on the screen is what is included in UK relevant earnings in order to set your annual allowance. Because the annual allowance is £60,000 per year or the maximum of your relevant earnings, whichever is lower. So say, for example, your relevant earnings were 50,000, then that would be the maximum that you could pay in. If, on the other hand, your relevant earnings were 100,000, the maximum would be 60,000. Important to note the range of earnings that aren't included in relevant earnings for the calculation of your annual allowance. For example, DB income is not one of them. So say, for example, you're in the situation which is perhaps unusual but not impossible, whereby you have a sizable DB pension from earlier on in your career, but perhaps now you've taken a step down, you're still working, but maybe you change careers completely to a lower income, or maybe you're working part-time. And say, for example, your DB income was a very generous £30,000 a year, but you're now only earning £20,000. Well, that £20,000 of your relevant UK earnings would be setting the limit of your annual allowance, such that you would not be able to put the entirety of your DB income into your pension. And here's a summary table of everything I've just gone through, so do feel free to pause the video to read in more detail. So I hope that this video has cleared up some of the more technical details of the DB pension trick that I went through in the previous video. There will always be so much detail that inevitably I have to leave out. So I'm really grateful for everyone's comments. And I'm sure that some of you out there will have thought of other points of detail that I might not have included in this video, which is an important reminder that people like me out here on the internet making YouTube videos are giving general guidance. This is not personalized, regulated financial advice. So whatever I'm saying, or anyone else online for that matter, always make sure that it applies to your specific circumstances. Everyone is different. It's called personal finance for a reason. So take this video as inspiration of the various different ways that you could be setting yourself on the path to the financial freedom that you are looking for. Just a quick reminder to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you so much. And there's a link in the video description where you can request a free call with me if you're interested in financial coaching. Thank you for watching to the end. Until next time, Hoi vara matro.